During the summer of 1996, two college students from Kenwick, Washington, were walking casually through the shallow water along the banks of the Columbia River. They stumbled upon a human skull and thus began the ordeal of the Kenwick Man, one of the oldest skeletons whose remains left clues that will blow your mind. Obviously, the skeleton was named Kenwick because of where it was found, and he was a man. So, Kenwick Man, you get the drift. Well, the students called the police, who quickly called Floyd Johnson, the coroner for Benton County, to help. Johnson knew he couldn't handle that task on his own, so he asked a well-known archaeologist in the area to help out with this strange skull. James Chatters, the archaeologist, came through and offered his assistance immediately after being asked. As night fell, Chatters and Floyd, the coroner, returned to the scene and painstakingly extracted almost all of the bones from the mucky and sandy soil. They made sure to transport the bones to Chatters' laboratory with extreme caution and laid them out on a table once they arrived there. Despite the obvious age of the skull, it did not exhibit any characteristics typical of Native Americans. The first thought that came to Chatters' mind was that it belonged to an early pioneer or trapper. However, upon closer inspection, he noticed teeth that were free of cavities, which suggests that the prehistoric individual consumed a diet low in sugar and starch. Also, the roots of the teeth had been worn down a lot, which is a common feature of prehistoric dental remains. Then Chatters found something important, a stone spear point stuck in the hip bone. This was more proof that the bones were from a long time ago. To confirm his suspicions, Chatters sent a bone sample to undergo carbon dating. The results showed that the bone was older than a whole 9,000 years. This was like a big shock to everyone. What in the world happened to it to cause it to end up there? There were no signs of scavengers' teeth marks on the bones, which suggested that the body had been buried not long after the person had passed away. The shape of the skull also reminded Chatters of people classified as Caucasoid, as opposed to Mongoloid people like modern-day Native Americans who have this Mongoloid appearance. The discovery of Kenwick Man had quite an impact not only on the scientific community, but also on the indigenous communities of the United States. According to the policy of the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, the people of the Umatilla tribe and other tribes argued that the remains should be given back to them so that they could be given a respectful burial. This NAGPRA Act was passed in order to protect the spiritual significance of Native American burial grounds and to make it easier for these tribes to reclaim human remains and cultural artifacts that had been wrongfully removed from their possession in the past. I mean, the Umatilla tribe had pretty solid reasons to demand the Kenwick Man if they believed he was one of them. There are a lot of disturbing accounts that come from the early days of museums collecting the remains of Native Americans. During the 19th century, anthropologists and collectors excavated recently buried Native American graves and burial sites, exhuming corpses and even beheading deceased Indians found on battlefields and sending their heads to Washington for examination. This practice was known as plundering. The fact that these tribes were trying to make a solid case for why they needed the Kenwick Man back did not stop archaeologists James Chatters and Douglas Owsley from the Smithsonian Institution from arguing about the origin. As scientists, they probably thought they knew better. They argued that the bones did not belong to modern Native Americans, but rather displayed similarities to people from Polynesia or Southeast Asia. Hence, they didn't think the Kenwick Man should be subject to the regulations that were outlined in the NAGPRA Act. This whole back and forth led to a legal dispute between the Native American tribes, the scientists, and the United States Army Corps of Engineers, all of whom wanted to claim ownership of the remains. Each of the parties believed that they were more deserving of ownership of the Kenwick Man. In light of the fact that the remains could not be categorized as Native American, at that time in accordance with NAGPRA, the United States Army Corps of Engineers was given the responsibility of the Kenwick Man's ongoing maintenance and preservation. The opportunity arose to conduct scientific research on the bones, which all parties involved readily grabbed. After some time had passed, Dr. Esk Willerslev and his team, who are well known for developing novel approaches to the collection of ancient DNA, began working on the problem of determining who the Kenwick Man was. After putting together the DNA sequence, the researchers compared it to the genomes of people living in different parts of the world, including indigenous people. The results of the analysis demonstrated that the Kenwick Man's DNA originated from Native American ancestors. Remember when I mentioned that Chatters said the shape was Caucasoid instead of Mongoloid like the Native Americans living today? This means that the findings by Dr. Willerslev claiming that the Kenwick Man was Native American were likely going to be disregarded. In order to investigate this contradiction, Dr. Willerslev has decided to work together with two of the most well-known experts in the field of skull morphology. The experts discovered through their research that the head shapes of modern-day Native Americans exhibit a wide range of diversity and variations. The Kenwick Man's skull was surprisingly found to be in this range, which goes against what had been thought before. It was finally proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the Kenwick Man came from Native American ancestry thanks to the findings of DNA testing and extensive research on the morphology of his skull. After a long time of holding the belief that he was their ancestor, the Native American tribes in North America were finally given the opportunity to reclaim his remains. Patty Murray of the United States Senate and Denny Heck of the United States House of Representatives took the initiative to speed up this process by introducing legislation that was designed to make it easier for the Ancient One to be returned to the people who are legally entitled to inherit him. The Kenwick Man was brought back to his native land for the very first time in February 2017, marking a momentous occasion for the various tribes. This long-awaited event brought to a successful close a contentious legal and scientific journey that had spanned over 2 decades. The following day, a solemn ceremony was held in the desert of the Columbia Plateau, where the remains were respectfully laid to rest. Over 200 people representing each of the 5 tribes that are indigenous to the Columbia Basin met in a concealed location with the purpose of paying tribute to their ancestor, the Kenwick Man, and appreciating the legacy that he might have left behind. If you enjoyed watching this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons to be notified when we post an exciting video. And trust us, we definitely will. Thanks for watching.